Do any of you know any revenge stories that teachers have legally taken against students? I make soap and candles as a hobby. Since I taught culinary arts, all of my candles looked and smelled like real food. During my first year at my last school, I came to this campus with 24 years of prior teaching experience. Prior to our winter break, I gave each of my colleagues a gift of one of my soap or candles. I gave Ms. R this candle. As you can see from the picture, it looked and smelled just like a shortbread glazed berry tart. Unbeknownst to me, Ms. R had been having a problem with recurring theft. Someone kept getting into her desk or her refrigerator snacks, candy, and even sandwiches. Ms. R took a pair of scissors and cut out the wicks. She then put a napkin on her desk and placed the tart on the napkin. During one of her classes, a student abruptly gagged, jumped out of his seat, and raced out of the room. A security camera caught him running down to the bathroom where he allegedly threw up. Mrs. R found the candle on the floor by the student's desk. Someone had bitten into it and spat it out. She and the student and the school's assistant principal were later able to have a long talk about theft. Probably would get scolded for doing this now, but my first year of teaching, I had a problem with my honors kids trying to cheat in middle school. The teachers were required to be in the halls during class change to monitor, but it was hard to monitor to your room and deal with anything happening in the hall, especially sixth graders new to lockers and needing help. So more than once I walked in and I could tell things on my desk had been moved or looked through. So the next test day, I left out a paper labeled test answer key and was extra helpful to kids at their lockers. I could hear the lookout saying, "She's coming," as they scramble back to their desks as I walk in. I give the test out, and about 10 or so minutes in, just as the first kid is getting ready to turn his in, I announce that just as an FYI, I thought they might like to know that the answer key on my desk was for the non-honors math test, which was totally different with totally different answers to the test they are taking. Suddenly, so many kids needed to erase a lot. I give 2 different versions of the test to the same class. Had a girl call me over and demanded I explain why she got a 40% and the girl next to her with the same answers got a 100%. I acted puzzled, like I couldn't believe how that was possible. She had a smug look on her face while I studied the 2 tests. Then I handed them back to her and said they are completely different tests. She said, "Oh, never mind, okay," and just wanted to end the conversation immediately. I had a couple of boys who were drawing penises all over the desks in my room. At first, I tried to erase them quickly and didn't comment because I didn't want to give the culprits any oxygen, but instead it was getting worse. New tactic, the next day I stood in front of each and every class and wondered out loud why anyone would feel the need to draw a picture of their penis on my desks. Were they worried they would forget what it looked like? Did they need to produce proof that they had won? Were they very proud of it and wanted to share? I am about the same age as my 6th grade students' grandmothers. Forcing them to sit there watching me say the word penis with a deadpan straight face about 25 times over the course of about 3 or 4 minutes was excruciating for them. I made it until the end of the day. By that time, they knew what was going to happen and were still mortified. I finally lost my cool and the whole class started laughing with me. It was great. Those kids are 9th graders now. It is still legendary. It has been 3 years and no one has ever drawn a penis on the furniture in my classroom since. Not my revenge story, but my husband's. He went through a spell where his grade 7 kids would leave those white paper reinforcement rings on his chair, sticky side up. He'd spend the better part of the day strolling around with his butt well reinforced before a colleague would see and point them out. This went on for a few days before he finally figured out what was going on. His revenge was to have a special science activity where he set up every microscope he could find in the building. His kids were pumped and couldn't wait to get going. What they didn't know is that he had rubbed each eyepiece with graphite powder. Half his kids ended up with black eyes. You could hear them laughing all the way down the hall. They thought it was hilarious and the perfect response. Hub's bum was reinforcement-free for the rest of the year. The chemistry teacher that I taught with had a really entitled student that also liked to sleep in class every day and then would mouth off when he'd wake him up. Said student also spent quite a bit of time demanding his grades get changed to as when he did nothing. At any rate, one day when the student was taking his daily nap, the teacher pulled at pair of iron spheres that he'd spent the last few weeks rusting and began lecturing the class on the reaction he was about to create. He then proceeded to wrap one sphere in aluminum foil and walked behind the sleeping student. He then quickly banged the spheres together, producing a small explosion and a very loud noise. The student woke up abruptly with a scream and nearly fell out of his chair in his panic while the rest of the class was laughing. I was a third-grade teacher at a private school and dealt with an awful child and his horrible parents. Out of my hundreds of students, he might be the one sociopath I've had. His parents blamed everyone else, including me, for his behavior. I moved to another private school, one of the top 3 in the state acceptance rate of about 16%. To make full-time, I started helping in the admissions department. This same family reached out to me on Facebook and asked me to write him a recommendation. You can imagine how that went. They were so confident he would get in, they didn't reapply for the next year at his current school. Yeah, I hate to say, but it felt good. I had a class where you gathered information in groups of 4, but you all had to write your own report. I was gone one day when a report had to be turned in, and as I was grading them, started seeing the same consistent answers. Found 11 that had the same everything in the written portion. So I graded it, but by sheer luck they scored an 88. Since they worked as one mind, I gave everyone their individual share of points. So as I was handing the papers out to the whole class and talking about why half the room had 100 on their test, the other half of the class started ribbing them. We told you, he'd know, he'd have the rules, he's not that stupid. One kid rolled out of his chair, he was laughing so hard. Fully expected a parent complaint, but never got one. Also didn't have a problem with group answers the rest of the year in all my classes. I had a prof that drove like one HR 20 min to get to our 7 p.m. 3-hour class. On a bad weather night, the freshmen in our class decided to leave about 35 min after class start. BC prof was late. However, they wrote 50 minutes on their note on the blackboard. And so, of course, the prof came between the 35 and 50 min mark. The upperclassmen waited for her. We were excused from the next class, and she gave the freshmen a test that she said she probably couldn't pass. She had 4 doctorates. Don't run out in a prof driving through the rain over an hour and lie about the time you left. One year I was having a big problem with cheating in my classes more than usual. So before a unit test, that was mostly multiple choice, I wrote out the answers on a post-it note and casually left it on my desk for a few days. Then I went into the test and made sure none of the actual answers corresponded to the ones I had written on the post-it. When they turned in the test, the kids that actually studied and tried did great, and I was able to use the fake answers to tell who had been trying to cheat. Had a kid who was just a pain in the ass in class. Always interrupting, making smart-ass comments, irritating people around him, you know the type. Well, this kid was 16 and happened to work after school as a janitor in a local diner. And when I found that out, I had an idea. I visited the diner and talked to the owner, the manager, and a couple of assistant managers with my idea and made sure they were okay with it before continuing. Fast forward to the next day, he's working and I go in. I sit down, order 3 bowls of chili and wait. All 3 bowls get to my table and I hold one in my hand, make eye contact with the kid and flip the bowl, dumping all of its contents on the floor. The manager looks over to PETA and says someone spilled over there. Go get the bucket and broom and clean it up. Kid looks at me with shock but does as he's told. After it's cleaned up, I grab bowl 2, pour it on the floor next to me. Again, manager says someone spilled, go clean it up. At this point, the kid is pissed, but he's doing it. After he's done, he starts staring me down as I grab bowl 3. I'm about to pour it out when he goes, Mr. Mathnut, what the hell? Why do you keep pouring chili all over the floor? You know I have to clean that up, right? I looked at him and said, because I'm bored and it's fun. Kid, you're making my job harder because I have to clean it up each time and it's not easy to clean. It's hard enough being a janitor. All I want is to just do my job and go home. Me, oh, you mean like how you make my job harder when you mouth off when all I want to do is just get through my lesson. Watch the light bulb click on over his head. I don't think he realized how his actions had caused me so much anguish and made my job harder. He then told me he got it and he was a better kid from then on. I once had 3 students who were just way too much. Sweet boys, but they would never stay quiet, always goofing off in class and wanting to banter with me. Now I love a good banter, but these guys were disrupting class. One day they went too far and I swore to them that I would make them regret it. I promised them I would get my revenge. For 15 years, they would keep asking me when I would get my revenge, always being on the lookout when I would get close to them. They never realized that my revenge was very much active, as they would always think about it during class. They did not stop misbehaving, but it was more manageable. I once had my kids do a flood drill. They had to take their shoes off, hold them above their heads, and sit on their stools with the feet on the highest rung to not get their feet wet. I sold it with the look, "It's a safety drill, we have to do it." I also had a day where I was telling the students something and one was skeptical, called me a liar. Another came to my defense, not that I needed it, and vehemently declared I would never lie to them. I proceeded to teach them about something that is most certainly a lie, but with the straightest face and all the sincerity behind a normal lesson. It took 15 minutes before little skeptic revealed that they Googled it and it was fake. White Knight again defended me, until he saw my evil grinning. I told them all that, while I appreciate their blind trust in me and that I don't like about things that matter or are important, this was a lesson in not following authority blindly and to question things. Sometimes the best revenge is to just play along. Over quarantine, I covered 2 months of our school's CAD and shop classes, fun story in and of itself. We used Google Classroom for management, and I used an app that came in the classroom package for CAD. It starts with one kid, an honors student in sports, submitting cell phone photos instead of just sharing his CAD files with me like he's supposed to. It's visibly not his work on the screen. It's the Google Meet video screen share of my demo in every last one of them. I give him several weeks to meet standards, with follow-up emails that go ignored. Progress reports go out and I get a particularly nasty letter from his mother and get admin involved. Kid claims he lost the files despite me walking the class through procedure every period. Admin tells me to give him the benefit of the doubt for now. Thing is, the kid never learned to use the app, and submitting a CAD piece through it is half of the final for the course. So the kid quits the Google Classroom on exam day and tries to play dumb. He first claims that he never knew there was a CAD portion, despite it being plastered literally everywhere. And when admin gets involved, he changes his tune to "Lord Grimm must have lost the file when I properly exited the classroom." Mom starts calling admin on a daily basis, so one afternoon, admin and I get together and go through the classroom records to verify the kid's story. What we found is that not only had the kid not done the CAD assignment in question, he had been sending photos of other students' work to the teacher I was covering. Hadn't done a single assignment for the class on his own. Admin himself files the academic dishonesty report and makes the calls suspending the student from sports and honors while I'm packing up my stuff in his office. It wasn't all roses. Mom continued to call the school every day for the rest of the school year, and also recruited a friend on the board in an attempt to get me fired. But it was horribly satisfying to hear the kid's grandmother, who subbed for our district, complaining about how her grandson had quit sports and chosen to go in a different direction with his life. This was funny, but I'd give it was revenge. Anyway, I kept showing up late to class, and one time the teacher jumped out to scare me when I was a freshman, lol. I'd why or how it came up in conversation with him later on the week I was graduating, but it did. Apparently, he knew it was either going to be me or some other kid. He didn't expect me to scream so loud, though. Another teacher and student would have prank wars with each other my sophomore year. I don't know what pranks he pulled on her, but I know that she at one point printed out pictures of, I think, cats and scattered them on places like his desk, lol. I'd if it was revenge really, and I'd why I did this, but I pretended to grab a teacher's food or something. Anyway, he told me to eat it, so I did, and pretended that I liked it even though we both knew I didn't. I'm sure there were others, but I can't remember them all, or I wasn't aware of it. I had a student with an attitude problem who didn't work to her full potential. Any behavior correction would be met with her rolling her eyes at me and a sullen expression. One class she did this and I wrote something on a piece of paper, walked over and handed it to her and I explained, "I found these under my desk." She burst out laughing. To her credit, from then on, she began participating in class, was well behaved, no more attitude. In fact, she started correcting other students' behaviors. I see her in the hallway and I adore her. I always have a big smile as I say hello. I had drawn a picture of eyeballs since I couldn't find my bag of googly eyes.